let's get right to it, as we have a lot here, John, and I figure I'll let the music play for you because it is your music, right?
It's not my music. I think it was Space Odyssey, and then Ric Flair.
Technically.
And then I took it.
Right. Well, you know, it's all about, I would say it's all about passing things down, right? It's a generational thing.
Yeah, and I blame Mike Gill. Mike Gill actually picked the music.
Okay.
So.
No problem. I just wanted you to be able to talk over your own intro music. It may not be your own music, but it's your own intro music, at least for that.
You know, it's interesting. I think I'll have to talk to Josh about that. Maybe I can get my own music. Maybe we got the budget for that.
Wait a second. Is this breaking news that John McMullen does not like the intro music that's been attributed to him this whole time?
No, I like the music. As Mike will tell you, it all started with a different wrestling theme song,
right,
which was Glorious, which is Bobby Roode's theme song. I think he gave it to Casey Joyner. I said I should have Glorious, and then he gave me Ric Flair's, which is more iconic, no question about it. So I agree with that part of it.
Okay.
But I still think Glorious would be the proper entrance music.
Now, does Casey have that, Josh, or is that up for grabs?
Well, here's the thing. Mike always plays it for Casey. I never play it when Casey comes on. I play him. I try to mix up the different WWE wrestlers because Casey
but
covers.
You're sending mixed messages. You're sending a mixed message to John McMullen. You've already sent a mixed message to Casey Joyner. I mean, the guy is spending some time on here like John is, and we're sending mixed messages like it's okay to change up their intro music. No wonder why it's all screwed up.
Mine never changes.
No, but Josh is doing it the right way.
The problem is Casey got the jump on me, and that was the problem.
Okay, well, we'll do our best to send a message to Mike Gill. He's on his way down to Baltimore if he hasn't hit there already, and we'll try to figure this thing out. Let me start with the poll question, John, and I don't know. I guess it was more obvious to other people than it was for me. Which of these scenarios is most likely to happen? Is it the Eagles losing to Washington, Minnesota losing to Chicago, the Rams losing to the 49ers?
Well, A and C aren't going to happen, so you have to hope for B, and that's probably not going to happen either. So I say D, none of the above.
But you sounded like B has the most chance, maybe.
Yeah, well, in theory, if the Bears were going all out and playing everybody and trying to win the football game, yeah, I think that would be the most likely scenario. So I understand why people jump to that. Although, you know, Minnesota is a much different team at home. That game's in Minneapolis. They're a much more difficult opponent, so it wouldn't be a gimme either way. But I can tell you, and I've written about it earlier in the week, and the Eagles believe this way as well, even though they don't admit it publicly. They don't think the Bears are going to play to win this game for a couple of reasons. One, they're not going to get the number 2 seed, and two, they'd rather play the Vikings in the playoffs than the Eagles. And understand that this team and this coaching staff is very close to the Chicago coaching staff. It's obvious with Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, but also Mike Rowe was there for 3 years, is very good friends with Vic Fangio. And they don't think the Bears are going to play all out. If the Rams get up 7 points, if they get down 7 points, they're going to start pulling people.
What's the likelihood the Bears can get up 13, 17 points early in first quarter if their ones are out there long enough?
Well, that's the hope. That is definitely the hope. And even more so if you look at the Rams, and they ruled out Todd Gurley, so maybe if San Francisco gets a lead, the longer you play, if you can get a lead, then maybe they start to try to win the game. So that's the possibility. That's the potential. I'm sure this is the NFL. It could always happen. but it's going to be difficult. I think, understand we all look at Chicago and that defense, and it's, I think, fourth in the NFL, certainly the best turnover defense. Third in the NFL is Minnesota. That defense is actually better from a statistical standpoint, not in turning the football over. But you talk about Mitchell Trubisky being on the road. I don't know if that's a likely scenario, but that's certainly the hope.
John McMullen joining me, Eytan Shander in for Mike Gill. It's the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN at Shander Show is how you can vote in that poll. All right, so did we miss anything obvious? Friday is a good day to look back this week and go through. You're on every day. I know it was holiday week, but to look at the conversation, to look at the matchup, to look at the themes, did we miss an obvious one? Because I know I'll go into where we began the conversation on Wednesday, which is I don't see a way in which Washington can win this football game. Now that we get closer, I hope we haven't missed an obvious one. I don't think we have, though. Right, John?
Well, I think that's the obvious one in that everybody, certainly the fan base and even certain members of the media, I haven't sensed it from the players, but everybody's treating this game as sort of like a given, a speed bump. And the Eagles are going to win this. It's just a matter of, do the Bears play, as we mentioned? Can the 49ers stick with the Rams? Those are the questions. If you look ahead in this league, it can jump you and bite you. I don't know. I haven't sensed that from the players. But some of the outside stuff tends to permeate inside. It's a division game. The Redskins played very tough in Nashville against what could be a playoff team, and the Tennessee Titans probably should have won that game. If they did win that game, this game would be everything to them. They're better than people think they are, especially defensively. So I don't think you can completely overlook them because they're on their fourth quarterback, and their fourth quarterback, Josh Johnson's actually better than the third quarterback was, and Mark Sanchez. Look, the Eagles should win the game. I think the Eagles are going to win the game, but there are a lot of people overlooking this team, and there is still some talent, especially defensively.
Yeah, I get it. And I think from a player standpoint, as you mentioned, that's all that matters in this short term here. Forget the game, because I can't imagine, and actually, you know what? Let me ask you this before I even assume otherwise. It's hard for me to think that after 2 straight weeks in which this offense has looked better than it did leading up to those 2 straight weeks, the defense clicking, causing turnovers, stopping teams on the ground, everything that's worked so well to beat back-to-back 10-win teams is just going to go away all of a sudden. Meaning, yeah, Washington might keep it close like they have over the past couple of weeks with that quarterback situation, John, but even still, it's not one that I think that they can overcome. Does that make sense? Like the Eagles won't all of a sudden lose their identity against Washington just because it's a divisional opponent.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think they're still, from their standpoint, there's still something to play for, and I think if you sort of rewind back a number of weeks, a lot of people didn't think they'd be playing in Week 17 with something to play for. So I do think from a player standpoint, they will take care of business. They won't overlook things, and we'll see how things break elsewhere. But while you say that, I mean, this team and this organization has had some issues at FedEx Field in years past. It's a kind of a strange place to play at times, and it's a strange situation because of all the dysfunction seemingly that always surrounds the Redskins. You got the DJ Swearinger issue now, calling out the coaching staff, calling out the defensive coordinator. That's one of their best players getting waived because they wanted to send a message. So there's a lot of issues with that team. There seemingly always is. But I've said this before, I think Jay Gruden has done one of the best coaching jobs in the NFL this year. I really do. If you think about the quarterback issues, obviously, and the fact that he was able to keep them in it until deep into Week 16. But also, if you go all the way back, their original plan was to have Darius Geis as the running back in a more traditional, modern offense. And they had to completely scrap that and build this offense around Adrian Peterson, who's had a great year, but is sort of a dinosaur as far as a running back goes in this league, an I formation back who likes to be 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and pick the hole. So I think he's done a wonderful job, and I don't think that changes in Week 17. So I do think they're a little bit more dangerous than most people think they are.
So I'm curious, you look at Todd Gurley being out, and this came down, I think, like 30 minutes ago, maybe 20 minutes ago, John. There's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching from Chicago's standpoint on that Rams-Niners game. With no Gurley, do you give San Francisco any shot whatsoever to keep it close enough that Chicago has to keep their game close enough? And then ultimately that might be the difference between – because you know this game, we're not talking about the best of 7. We're talking about a missed punt. We're talking about a blocked field goal. We're talking about crazy stuff that happens even when the starters are in. And now against the – I don't know. All I'm saying is if you get me a close game in the fourth quarter, I still feel good about the Eagles' chances pending them beating the Skins.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the Eagles' hope, is that somebody can keep Chicago interested, and that somebody really has to be San Francisco or Chicago itself. But remember, the Bears haven't ruled out Allen Robinson, Eddie Jackson, but they labeled them as doubtful. They're not going to play. You know, when you talk about guys that are listed as doubtful on injury reports now, it's less than 10% that play. So they're erring on the side of caution themselves, putting down what's going to be an all-pro safety, their best receiver, sitting them down with the playoffs in mind. From the Rams' perspective, they're erring on the side of caution. They don't think they need Gurley to beat a 49ers team with Nick Mullins. And remember, Anderson went nuts. They signed him. So they're comfortable in the fact that they're going to be able to beat the Niners. I can't imagine them losing that number 2 seed. But, hey, crazier things have happened. We go back that number of years where the Eagles needed 5 things to happen and made the playoffs. So Minnesota's got issues, and they've had issues all year. And they don't match up well against Chicago. But, you know, that and I explained this earlier in the week, you might think that helps you, but it actually hinders you, because I think Matt Nagy is one of those new school coaches who's thinking about the entire situation. And he knows the styles make fights, and he would rather face the Vikings in the playoffs. And to me, that means he's going to go vanilla, and he doesn't want to face the Eagles, and he's trying to get to the divisional round. And ultimately, he's going to decide the best way to do that is to beat the Vikings in Soldier Field, which ultimately I think they do. But I think that's the matchup they want, and they can manipulate it to get it.
Wow. Yeah, you know, you're right. When you lay it out that way as far as a hindrance is concerned, John McMullen joining us, Eytan Shander in for Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash. Let's assume, based on my question and your answer, that nothing will drastically change with how this team looks on Sunday against the Skins. So the last 3 weeks, regardless of what happens moving forward, postseason or not, looking night and day different. We also know that the starting quarterback was dealing with an injury and the rehab and coming back of 2 tears in his knee. What I'm asking with this all in the backdrop, John, is what's the lesson? You know, every year you look back and say, okay, what can we learn? What's the lesson that Doug Peterson and the offense, specifically the offense with Doug at the helm, what's the biggest lesson they take away and learn from this season?
Well, I think Doug is a better play caller with Nick Foles than he is with Carson Wentz. He has to sort of learn I think he's got a deeper history with Nick Foles. If you think about when he was drafted, when he was first in Philadelphia, and Doug was pretty much the only guy to look at him in the pre-draft process. And they have differences as a player in that Carson likes more autonomy, and Nick pretty much wants to be told what to do. And I think he's got to figure that out. And I think there's got to be a line there to where you can take advantage of the more talented player, but still develop similar game plans as you do with the lesser player. I don't think he's found that line yet, but I think he needs to find it in the future.
At JF McMullen on Twitter. All right, John, prediction. What do you think as far as the 3 games of importance? Rams, let's start and go from 3 all the way up to 1. So Rams, Niners, Bears, Vikings, Eagles, Skins.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to be chalk. I think the Eagles are going to win. I think the Vikings are going to win, and I think the Rams are going to win. And unfortunately, that would leave the Eagles on the outside looking in. A very good run to end the season. And then you'll start talking about situations in games, Dallas and Tennessee, Carolina, where you think you should have won, and that could have made the difference. And that's why all these games are important. NFL seasons are, by definition, small sample sizes, and that means every week is important, and you see it as you head to Week 17. You don't control your own destiny, and you need help from a team that probably doesn't want to play you. So they're probably not going to help you.
All right, I have to ask you, John, we brought this up earlier in the show, and Josh had an interesting answer. But Pat McAfee's making his NFL broadcasting debut this Sunday. And it begged the question for us, who right now in the NFL, that's playing right now in the NFL, is going to be the next Romo, not the next Witten? Meaning the guy that's going to come out and actually be the next great sports analyst in this game, big stage, whatever it may be, Monday, Thursday, whatever game he calls. But that next great broadcaster in the NFL playing right now.
Well, I don't know if great, but if you go by the way TV thinks, you look at the Dallas Cowboys and who's next to go. And I would say maybe because of all the injuries, Sean Lee. They always want to put a Cowboy in the booth. Sometimes it works. Tony Romo's tremendous at it.
Sure.
Sometimes it doesn't work. Jason Witten. Although, I think people criticize Jason Witten from coming right outside of obviously playing and doing a poor job. That's the way it's supposed to be. Tony Romo was just so good. That's the outlier. You usually need some time to ramp up, but we know what television executives think of Dallas Cowboys, so you always have to think Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and that's why guys like Rondé Barber are doing the 5th broadcast on Fox, because they're not good enough. And here comes Jason Witten shoved down our throats. And I'm with you that not everybody starts out as great as Romo does, but not everybody starts out on that high of a platform, which is why I think Witten was susceptible to so much.
Never. And I think, to be honest, when they gave it to Tony Romo and they gave him the number 1 slot, I thought he would fail, because I think it is more difficult than people think it is. And then he turned out to be just a natural at it, and they thought they could do it again. And it's just not going to work that way. So you should be learning on the 4th team or the 5th team, and then sort of move your way up from there. But as far as guys being naturals, you got to think quarterbacks, and you got to think the ability to, if they handle sort of their post-game podium stuff well, and maybe they can think quickly on their feet. And that's what executives are looking for. But they always default to Cowboys. It's kind of annoying.
I know. All right, and I'm thinking as you're laying that out, all right, give me a non-Cowboy quarterback. I like Nate Burleson. I think he does a good job.
He does a tremendous job.
Yeah.
And Nate's a perfect example. This Nate was a receiver on the Vikings and Lions. He was a good player. He wasn't a great player. But he sort of worked his way into doing things with that NFL Network show, and they didn't just throw him into this high-profile spot. And I think he is already probably a top 5 guy. That's because he was given a little bit of an opportunity to get comfortable in front of the camera, and he's off and running. And he's a smart guy who can formulate his thoughts quickly, but he doesn't have the big name.
That's the biggest difference. You don't play for the Cowboys, you don't have the big name, you're out. John, we appreciate it as always, my friend. I'm sure. Well, when are you back on? Because Monday and Tuesday, holiday stuff. So are you back with us?
That's a good question. You got to ask Josh.
John will be on Monday.
Monday. John, you'll be on Monday. You didn't know that, did you?
All right. I did not know that yet. So,
we look forward to hearing you
we'll
break
see.
down the Eagles' win.
It'll be either a post-game Doug Peterson day where he talks about the playoffs, or it'll be clean-out day. So either way, it'll be a newsworthy day for the Eagles.
Awesome stuff, John. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Eytan.